This is Dortmund after all.
Okay,
That should be
well,
the tagline of the podcast. This is Dortmund after all.
we'll start with the fun game, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be quick.
Well, anyway, welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. Today I'm joined by Ali and Joey. So Dortmund this week smashed Celtic off the park in a 7-1 thriller. Hat-trick in the first half for Karim Adeyemi. Ali, did I text you anything about rotating him out for this game?
Never. There's three players that you'll never, ever talk about, or
What do you mean?
talk
I
poorly
texted
about.
you that he should be rotated out for fitness
Yeah.
issues
Yeah,
prior
but,
to the game. Is that correct?
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. But the three players that you protect are Brandt, Schlotty, and Kareem. So even when he texts me, "Hey man, I think you should take a break, rotate it out, whatever," I don't
We'll
believe
see.
it.
Listen. I can't do any spoilers, but we'll see if I protect Brant on this show today.
All right. Fair enough.
We'll see if I protect Brant at all on this show today. Anyway, you also had goals from Guirassy, Emre Can from the spot, and Felix Nemecha with a pretty nice first-time hit that found I think it went post in. Very nice hit through traffic. But then again, you look at the expected goals, 2.64 to 2.2 on whatever resource our producer used for this one. It was Brian was our producer, so thank you for him. But we don't know exactly what the source is. So some sources had it, I think, a little bit better at about like 0.6, 0.8 XG difference in Dortmund's favor. Whatever one he used only had 0.4, which is not that great. It's not the XG difference you would expect when you win 7-1, but Karim Adeyemi was on one that one. So how did you guys feel watching that?
It was complete entertainment for 90 minutes. I mean, I can't off the top of my head think of the last time I watched Borussia Dortmund score 7 times in one match. And the fact that it was just so one-sided given the fact that Celtic was in form. I mean, this was just entertaining. Those strikes from Kareem, I mean, 2 penalties in the first half. What more could you ask for in a Champions League night than a 7-1 victory and moving top of the table? I'll take it even if it doesn't last long.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember a 7-goal game for Dortmund, but I do remember the season with the Turkish Messi, Emre Mor, Dembele, and Aubameyang. We scored 6 goals a couple times in the Champions League group stage, so I do remember that.
Now that you mention
but that's almost 10 years ago.
there was an 8-4 at one point against was it Besiktas or something like that?
I don't
might
think
have
it was
mixed
the
that up.
Turkish side.
Yeah, I might have gotten that wrong, but there was an 8-4, and I just remember I think both Götze and Kagawa scored in that one, so that'll take you back a few years.
Yeah, I expected it to be a much closer game. I went on a Celtics show and I said, I'm expecting Celtic to park the bus and be really lethal on the counter because that's how I picture them playing. And I didn't expect them to try to outplay us, and they just really, I guess, collapsed, I want to say, and luckily, we capitalized, and it was a fun watch. But I was like, this is a weird game. I was not expecting this.
Yeah, I think Celtic kind of played into our hands because the way Celtic always play is in Scotland. They play against teams with such a significant financial disparity in a similar way we do. But theirs is even more stark because they can afford like your lower level Champions League players and a global scouting network. And most Scottish sides really cannot do that. And Celtic used to be good because they would buy up the best Scottish talent. Now they don't do that. They just buy the best up and coming talents from lesser markets that they think might have Champions League potential. So you see them take a ton of very, very cheap transfers that have high upside, and from Japan, Australia, places like that, and a lot of them work out. So credit to them for their scouting and have become like real good players. But in a team format against Dortmund, if you're trying to play the way they play in Scotland, which is kind of what they did, you're playing right into Dortmund's hands. And like Dortmund can just outgun them because like the quality of finishers on Dortmund is a bit higher than what you would have in Scotland, and a bit higher than a Kasper Schmeichel has faced since leaving the Premier League, and like that's kind of what happened here. Like you have a goalie who's a couple years past his prime, who's still pretty good, but no longer like an elite shot stopper. And you have Dortmund with an elite shot stopper and with much better finishers that are currently playing in Scotland, and that's kind of what you saw there. Because again, like the chances we created weren't incredibly different. Kareem Adeyemi scored like a deflection and some bangers, and that's kind of put that game to bed. Put it to bed early. I don't know how much we want to talk about that game beyond that because I think we have a lot to get into today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk about it. It was a great match to watch. Like you mentioned, we didn't necessarily create the best chances throughout. And I don't know, we might have mentioned it already, but Kareem Adeyemi's personal XG in that game was about 0.25, and he managed 3 goals. So if you're just looking at the AI models, it seems like he shouldn't have scored any of those. And I mean, one was a deflection, and the other two were, were absolute rockets. So I think we can chalk that up in some ways to a great individual performance on his part. But I also think the early goals kind of shell-shocked Celtic in a way, when they were in a position where this was the first time this season for them that they had been trailing and losing a match. So I think we really just kind of stuck it to them in that sense. But I wish we could have carried it on to the weekend, and we'll get onto that more later. But what do you think, Ali?
I think shell shocked is a perfect way to put it because at some point they were trying to build a rhythm, link a couple passes together, and they couldn't find each other. They were struggling to do what they do in the league against us, and it was a bit of a collapse and a capitulation. I was expecting them after the third, fourth goal to play a lot more defensive, and just go for the counters because they do have quick players, right? And they can find success, especially against a team like us, as we saw in the game we'll talk about later. But in terms of the game, it was great. 7-1 is a big statement. We're carrying on the form that we had last season in the Champions League, and I'm happy about that. But it's the league, man. The league is what bothers me. There's a lot to talk about there, and we'll get to it. But I'll let Eli take it from here.
Okay, so first, let's do a bit of housekeeping with kind of what's going on with the players in the squad. So we have injuries to Kareem Adeyemi and Julian Duranville, and Reyna suffering a setback in his rehab process. We don't have a timeline on Reyna. I just want to touch on that real quick. You're probably not going to get one because they never should give out timelines with Reyna. This is nothing against Reyna, the player or the person, but when you've had time periods where you were injured for long stretches of time, granted, he just had a full year essentially where he was almost entirely fit, I think barring a couple short stints. You don't want to give out a timeline because then if there's a setback, it looks even worse and the player gets to hear stuff about how he's injury prone and stuff like that twice over. So never should have given a timeline. They said he was on pace to be back early. That was a little premature, obviously, a little silly of them to do, in my opinion. So they're just going to protect him, do what's best for his career, and he'll return when possible. The other two, Duranville and Adeyemi, they're out 6 to 7 weeks, based off what we last heard, and that's not great. I don't know really how we replace them. Coming into the squad is Cole Campbell. In this match, another player on the books would be Hetver, and then after him, the senior prospects would be, I guess, Krevson, who's played right back, was a 10 last year for the academy, but now in the second team, he's played right wing and he's played as a right back. I really liked him at right back. I will say in the 45 minutes he spent there when I watched him in person against 1860 Munich. Shout out to me being in person and to all the supporters who were very kind to me when I was there. But anyway, like there's not really depth beyond Cole Campbell. I did watch Cole Campbell against 1860 Munich in person. He's had some very good highlights against other second or third tier teams, but in this match he came off the bench for 30 minutes. Uh, there's nothing for me to talk about the player. He I think dribbled a guy once and had like to get a cross in, not to get by him necessarily, and the cross got claimed. Aside from that, he showed some like really good potential, doing some like neat touches on the end line that didn't really amount to anything. There was no end product from him. Like there wasn't a key pass that was worth mentioning. There wasn't a shot that was worth mentioning. So this is a very, very raw player, who I don't think is necessarily first team ready based on the 30 minutes I've seen. He's had some incredible highlights at that level, and people that watch him more think he's closer to being ready than I can say off my 30 minutes I saw of him. But regardless, like you can't expect big things from a guy on his first team debut, first time in the Bundesliga. So that's where we're at. Do you have any thoughts about the injuries?
I mean, they're really unfortunate. Especially Kareem Adeyemi. I mean, since the season's begun, with all the inconsistencies, he has still been delivering goals and assists, and it just feels like it feels extra crappy that he gets injured immediately after he scores that first half hat trick in the Champions League. I was hoping that it was just going to be out a week or two because he seemed to recognize the injury right away and kind of sat down. But unfortunately, it was 3 to 4 weeks, and now it's 6 to 7 weeks. So I think the only good news with the injuries right now is that we're about to enter an international break. So at least there's a couple weeks of space where Dortmund do not have any games to play. I think it's also unfortunate that we've lost Julian Duranville to injury now too. And we'll get into the starting 11 for the game against Union Berlin in a minute. But I think we're seeing exactly how Shaheen is trying to cope with the losses of these players, because we had so many promising wing players, and then it feels like in a very short span, suddenly the depth on the wings is missing, and without Reina too. So I'm not sure I have too much more on that. I'm just hoping that they get fit again because we could use any of those three players on the wing right now.
I mean, you know, he scored a hat trick in the first half. I don't know why he was on for that long afterwards. He should have been taken out and taken care of a lot sooner. He didn't need to be on. For how many minutes was it? I can't remember off the top of my head, but
or 2 in the second, I think.
Two, yeah, like he didn't even need to, go out for the second half. He did his job. It was 5-1 at half. I don't expect them to score five, and us to be silent. But obviously, big loss. He's a big part of our press. Duranville, it's good to have someone like that off the bench who can take on people. We don't have that anymore. Reina, I'm a big fan of the player, so hope he comes back soon. But Kareem, should have been taken care of a bit more.
Yeah, so you're up like 5-1 or whatever at the half. This guy played 90 minutes 2 days ago. His first full 90 of the season had played 86 minutes against Bruges. you're up 5-1. Like I just for like the one sentence about this, we'll get more into it, but like the press, the whole system essentially hinges on Kareem Adeyemi this season. When he's not on the right wing, the system does not work. We've seen that when it was Sabitzer there. We've seen it now in this past game against Union. The system is considerably worse. I think Maxi Bayer should be given time, but the system doesn't work when Kareem Adeyemi's not there. He has played 90 minutes 2 days ago, and you're now running him out in the second half when you're up 4 goals against a team from Scotland. There's no reason for that. I don't even know why he's playing against Celtic, because there's a serious issue, in my opinion, if you can't beat Celtic playing your £30 million second string right winger against them. Like £30 million signing Maxi Bayer. I think he needs minutes. He needs to be given a chance to gel with the team, to build some confidence, and like Celtic's not necessarily as good as any Bundesliga team in the top half, maybe the top 12 even, because they're not in a top 5 league, and like that's the way things are. So if Maxi Bayer can't be rotated in that match for Kareem Adeyemi, played 90 minutes 2 days before, there's a serious issue. Shaheen's probably felt a little pressure on his job, given the slow start to the season, and so he's thinking about his job, and he's thinking about the fact that he really has this philosophy of kind of running out like the players he thinks are like the best 11 guys in training or whatever. He said he wants to have it be entirely merit based and not rotate players. Well, that's stupid. That is stupid. We have sports science in the year 2024 that says football players cannot fully recover a match in like under 5 days. Like you need 4 or 5 days to get to 90% of your physical levels. 2 days rest, and you're gonna run them out in the second half when like it's in a demanding position. Wingers are routinely subbed in 60 minutes. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's really stupid. I said it last year. I said it. I'm gonna say it again. I'm sure at some point this year. But just because a player, like, just because your system's dependent on a player doesn't mean you need to play them 90 minutes or close to 90 minutes every single match week, because you need to think about your next match. And now for the next 6 to 7 weeks, we're gonna be without him. When you literally just could have rested him the second half, rested him for this match, and like been more responsible than playing a guy who just played a full, or like sub him against Bochum after we score like the third or the fourth even. You get 5 changes now, like it's not needed. But let's move on. Let's talk about Union Berlin. What are your general thoughts on this game?
Same old story with Dortmund. I mean, I think my biggest observation is just the body language of the players when they're not in the Westfalenstadion. It's like night and day, and I don't know what Shaheen can do to build the confidence of our players when they travel away from home. I mean, yes, we had the win against Club Brugge that was away, but those were a few late goals in a match that was a bit lackluster before that. But we see
I don't know why we're talking about confidence right now. I'm going to be honest. I don't think like confidence is what prevents you from like knowing how to win the ball back as a team.
No, I mean,
like,
I don't think that's
we can
the
talk
only
about
thing.
confidence. I think like the Westfalenstadion is like the difference, because like we're not a good team. Like we're a little above average. And so at home, a team that's a little above average becomes above average. So at home, we're above average. We go on the road, we lose the advantage of the yellow wall, which I just saw. Gonna plug that again. It's fantastic. And when you lose that advantage and the other team gets a little boost, that's about a half or a third the size, because they're not as good as the yellow wall. then they get a little boost and you don't get your boost, and that's the difference. It's not like a confidence thing. It's like the other team
That's
has to
exactly
fly
what it
to the
is.
hotel. It's like,
I mean, there's you can talk about traveling too, but I mean, just watching the players from the first whistle, their facial expressions, they're confident at home. They can mount a 2 goal comeback to pull off a win. But when they go away from home, it's like we watch them with their tails between their legs, and the game plan can just go right out the window no matter what it is. And I mean, we look at the results and we see that too. I mean, 9 out of 9 points from home matches and 1 out of 9 points from our away games. And it's not like, I mean, okay, Stuttgart finished second last year, but it's not like Werder Bremen and Union Berlin are Bundesliga giants. If we want to be challenging for titles, then the Borussia Dortmund players need to figure out some way to improve their game, especially on the road. And it's not perfect at home either, but I mean, these results on the road can't continue. And that's my 2 cents at least.
I mean, like you're right. We do suck on the road. It's harder to play on the road. It's always going to be harder to play on the road. I'm just saying that I think the issue with us being on the road right now is that the difference is so stark because we're not good. And like when you're not significantly better than the opposition tactically, then all of a sudden the difference of being home versus away is a bigger proportion of why you're beating teams. Whereas if you're just a good side, you'll be good home or away. That's more my point.
Sure,
So
but
like,
I do wonder what the result would have been against Celtic if that match was away. I mean, maybe we still would have pulled off the win. I don't think it would have been 7-1 though. But I do wonder.
I mean, I think if you play that match at home 10 times, it's not going to be 7-1
Sure.
any of the times. So like, I think 7-1s are like kind of flukes in which you usually play pretty well. In that match, I think we played okay and got very lucky. And you also have to remember that like it is an inferior goalkeeper and inferior like ball strikers and finishers compared to like top five league talent, Bundesliga talent, high end Champions League talent,
Oh,
and
sure,
like
but all of
that's
all
more
of what you're
different.
describing could also be said about Werder Bremen and Union Berlin too.
But like I think the gap between the finishers at Werder Bremen and Dortmund are closer.
That's fair. I would agree with that.
Like a lot of the guys at Celtic would love a move to Werder Bremen.
But I mean, we don't have to harp on this too much because no matter how you look at it, this was not a good game against Union Berlin.
Yeah, yeah, and also just like for a reference point for our listeners at home, Arne Engels is a well thought of, relatively young player. I think he came through the Augsburg Academy, and he wasn't going to get a ton of minutes for Augsburg this season. He's typically seen as like a 6 or an 8 type of midfielder, but he's playing the 10 for Celtic because uh, he's that much better than a lot of the guys they have, technically, so he can play higher up the pitch, even if he's profiling more of a like deeper midfielder at the professional game at the higher levels. In the same way that like Paris Brunner played striker for the United Teams last year, even though he profiles more as a winger, because he's so much better than everyone at that level. You just put the guy in the more important position where he can make the bigger impact, and that's the difference between like a guy that was going to be a rotation player at Augsburg is then a starter for Celtic.
Sure. I want to hear Ollie's thoughts on the match, though. We've been chatting a bit.
No, I've been loving it. I do agree. We have a huge problem playing away from home. It's something that needs to be addressed. Now, whether it's a confidence issue, whether it's tactical, that's it's a different conversation. But in terms of this game, um, I texted Eli saying, "Man, this is a tough watch," because I didn't know what the game plan was, because in the first half, we got done out by one ball over the top right for the first goal, and then just an unfortunate situation right with the penalty, um, and then the second goal it fell to someone on top of the box that wasn't marked, and he got a shot away, and then we kind of didn't really do much in the second half. Everything was going through Jan Koto alone. Really, if I'm being really honest, because Bayer didn't have a great game. He's not getting enough minutes. He's not really in form. So it's it's not like I don't want to blame players, and I think Eli said this already. I really don't want to blame players. I don't want to say it's this guy's fault or it's like the coach or all this, but like something needs to be addressed because the you know our problem solvers, right? Our Brants, our Sabitzers, our JBGs, they couldn't find the space. We couldn't really play in the midfield. Everything was going wide. That's an issue that we have to talk about. When we did go wide, we didn't really find success. Well, why is that? Was it the quality in crosses? Did we not have enough bodies in the box? So on and so forth. It was just a really tough watch because the few things that they were trying weren't working, and they didn't really experiment. Right? They didn't try something new. They didn't try something different. It was just like give it to Jan Koto and cross. Give it to Jan Koto and cross. And I'm like, come on. Like, what's going to happen? It's going to be the same result every time if we keep doing it. But, yeah, I don't want to ramble on for too long. But that's kind of how I felt in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I think like what we kind of talked about after that was basically Dortmund's structure. It's very predictable. Like we all know kind of what Shaheen's trying to do, the shape he wants us in, and I think it's all well and good. Like he wants his right wing back to get all the way forward and provide the width in the final third. He wants his right winger to play as a winger in our when the ball's in our own defensive third and when it's in our middle third. And then in the final third, he wants the right winger to invert, and the left winger is your true 1v1 guy. And you want to find switches to him to give him 1v1s. We saw Jamie Bino Gittins run at the back line, I think, once in this match, and I think it led to our goal. Now, it's not going to have a 100% success rate every time Jamie Bino Gittins gets to run at players, but we're going to talk later about like how our defense doesn't limit chances and it gives the other team a lot of chances to make good things happen. The more you see Jamie Bino Gittins running with the ball, facing the opposition goal, the more opportunities he's going to have to create danger. And when you give him one chance, there's only like so much he can do. And that's because the system is so predictable. Like I just walked you through how it's like on this side, you have to defend this way. You just have to, if you double the left winger when the ball's on the left side, it's a deep cross or nothing. And deep crosses are statistically a very poor, inefficient way of creating chances. And in a similar way, when the ball's on the right, you have to have a bit more width and make sure that someone is tracking Koto. And against any of these sides, like back five side, you're going to have Tom Rotha essentially as your left wing back. He's going to stay wider. He's going to mark Koto. Tom Rotha is 6'4". Jan Koto is 5 foot, maybe 5, maybe 4, maybe 3, maybe 6. I'll give him the 5'6", maybe. No one knows, but he doesn't necessarily have the size to be able to get past him because he'd have to take 6 steps. And Tom Rotha would take 1 and he'd probably be there. But that basically creates a situation where unless you're able to set Jan Koto on an overlap or something like that, he's not going to find a ton of space, and you're going to see crosses from deep that are going to have to be in the air. The crosses in the air are considerably more inefficient. What you've seen Kareem Adeyemi have success at this year is he's a bit faster, so he can use his exceptional pace and acceleration to kind of set himself up in more space when the ball gets in behind, and he can play cutbacks on the ground, which are statistically much more likely to result in goals. And that's why Kareem Adeyemi has gone from a .23 expected goals assisted per 90 guy to this season he's at .49, which is genuinely world class levels if he's to sustain that over a whole season, which is a whole nother matter. It's been like 8 games, 5 in the league is the sample size that data's from. So he's not there yet, but that's the level he's playing at over that very short sample size. And that's more the issue is it's very easy to game plan against this because if you're in a back three, your left center back is going to mark the right winger and you're going to have your wing back push out a little wider to Koto, and you're going to have your central midfielder on your right side pinch out wider towards Dortmund's left so they can kind of double our left winger. And that's really all you need to worry about because we don't have a considerable presence in like the center attacking midfield park right now because we have Brandt and Gross kind of just like roaming out to support out wide and play those deep crosses when the ball's getting stuck there and we don't know how to get it into these central areas and create centrally, and that's making us too easy to mark out wide essentially.
I think to kind of add to what you're saying, with a bit of the predictability in how we're lining up. I think that it's no more evident than our defending right now too. For our regular listeners, I think I said the exact same thing a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. But once again, we've conceded a goal where we've allowed the other team the shot that is far too easy when Borussia Dortmund has like all 10 non-keeper players between the shot and the goal. And it just feels like frantic, desperate defending. And anyway, I don't know what the solution is to that, but
I think that's a goal that happens.
But it's far too frequent right now.
Well, I think that's like not necessarily a thing. Like you're probably remembering these goals because there's a ton of chances where people miss these, but like it's off a corner. I think the issue is more like why are we not controlling the ball? Why are we not controlling the areas in which the ball is being played in? Because this kind of gets into the next thing I wanted to talk about is the State of the Union and compare some things this year to last year to kind of talk about like the differences we're seeing and kind of take a look at what Shaheen's been able to accomplish thus far and also look at like some of the things in terms of the way Dortmund's press might be failing and to see evidence of is it actually failing or is this like a run of where we're getting unlucky. And I think like the goal you concede, like Tom Rotha knocks down a corner and then a guy hits a ball through traffic. Kobol's not going to see that well. That scores. That's a very common type of goal. The way you would limit that goal is by conceding less corners. I'm saying that with like a bit of attitude. I feel like I don't mean it that way against Joey. I just think like I think you would agree with that statement.
I would, but I also think at times there's a bit too much passive defending where our players are getting ready to try to block the shot when they should be taking the step to try to dispossess the other player. And I do think there's a little bit of hesitancy, especially when things are going back and forth inside the box. But I just feel like it's a style of goal that, yes, it does happen, but it is happening a bit too frequently for my liking. And I think the combination of more proactive defending and just defending in a way that we concede fewer set pieces would resolve that, I suppose, at least in theory.
Yeah, so what
go ahead.
Ali and I were kind of talking about right before we started this episode is kind of, is the team better or worse at defending this year? Because Ali hates stats, but I said I was looking at him and he actually
Easy now.
Sorry. Ali's not a big stats guy, and I was looking at some stats, so he actually asked if we were conceding more or less chances than we were last season. So last season, Dortmund, their XG against was 1.53, which for a side that competes for Champions League finals is terrible. This season, it is 1.62. Our XG for last season was 1.86. Um, this season it's 1.76. So we got worse at both defending and scoring. Not a recipe for success. So our XG difference is 0.34. Last year it was 0.34. Excuse me. This year it's 0.13. And for reference, last year Bayern was 1.5 and Leverkusen was 1.3. Just so you get like an idea there.
Context.
Just for the record, I don't hate stats. I just don't look at them. But in terms of so you guys bring up both great points about defending. I said it to Eli earlier. I'm like, I think they're just confused. Like, they don't seem to know how to recover the ball after losing it, because although they want to play possession, you do run the risk of these counters, right? Of that ball over the top, conceding shots, set pieces, whatever. It's gonna happen, right? But the reaction, right, to recover the ball, it's not it's not synchronized, right? And that results in all these chances being conceded with the great numbers that Eli has provided. I think we could see that. I think we could see that.
Oh, I have a lot more.
I know. I could see him. I think our defensive just we're not in sync, right? Whether it's the offense, whether it's the defense, we're just not in sync, right? Like there's a lot of confusion, because when we lose the ball, and that pass comes in front of the center backs, I'm confused, because I'm like, what? How did it get there so quickly? We have like 4 players in front of the ball. Like, there's no way that we should be already conceding a 1v1 in the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of the game. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, right? But Eli, take it away with the stats. So I'll sit back and listen.
Yeah, the one thing I want to add about this, because there was a match this weekend today, that we all did watch, and like the thing that kind of like I think pissed us off was the Schlotterbeck penalty. Is essentially like the pass that Union Berlin wants to play every single time they get the ball is that little ball into the wide channel to their forward to either take like a decent quality chance when they get in behind, or like play a cutback. And it's that ball into that same channel, and for whatever reason, our left center back is now defending on the right side of our own box in this pass that, like, you literally have time to prepare for. Like, if you've watched Union Berlin ever play in the last 5 years of being in the Bundesliga or the second Bundesliga, you will have seen them attempt this pass 30 to 50 times a game, because it's how they score goals. Like, they want to score. They're going to end the season with about, like, 1.2, something like that, goals per game. Maybe a little bit more on a good year, a little bit less in a bad year. But the way they score all these goals is literally with that same ball. It's the same ball every time. So if you're not prepared for that ball, and your left center back is now like tracking all the way out into where like the right center back would be, there's a significant issue with like your rest defense, which is just like an advanced soccer term for like where are your players defensively when you are in possession. But now let's kind of get into something that shows that, like, these games aren't going poorly because of an individual failures. Like, the players aren't failing to turn up on the day. The players might not be playing their best on a given day, but that's something that happens to every team over the course of a league season. That's, like, the nature of 34 games. So Emre Can last year, 3.92 tackles and interceptions per game per 90 minutes. This season, 1.82. I am not a big Emre Can defender. Our like devoted listeners will know that. But Emre Can has not had a massive physical fall off from last year. There is no reason for that type of fall off unless our press simply stopped working. Like, we don't have a way in which we want to win the ball back. And you can confirm that because you look at Sabitzer. Last year, 2.34 tackles and interceptions per 90. Uh, this year, 1.88. Nemecha's actually about the same, a little bit better this year, from 2.65 to 2.78. Pascal Gross with Brighton last year had 2.66, which isn't anything to write home about, but it's a bit better than his 2 this year. Again, it's a small sample size, but you're seeing that Dortmund consistently have players that are playing below their level of where they would typically have the work rate. These players all have the work rate to win the ball back more. You're looking at Schlotterbeck. Last year was 3.62, which is absurdly high for a center back. You wouldn't want your center backs under that much pressure. That's probably why we conceded over 1.5 xg against per game last year. Terrible number. This season it's 4.2. So you can criticize him for the penalty and could he do better there? Yes, but it's also a 1v1 duel, and how many times a game do you want to see your defenders have to make decisions on a 1v1 duel in the box? It's not a recipe for success, no matter how good you are. How quickly do people forget that last year, when Dortmund arguably had the most effective center back pairing in the world, of Hummels and Schlotterbeck, that took them all the way to the Champions League final. Mats Hummels picked up multiple red cards and conceded multiple penalties, not because Mats Hummels is a bad player, but because Dortmund's press didn't know how to win the ball back in non-dangerous areas. Last year, the difference was Dortmund's press actually was designed to allow your best defenders to win the ball back in what happened to be dangerous areas, which is why we conceded so many chances. But it did allow for you to ride a couple good games from your elite center backs to a Champions League final. But basically, this year we don't even have a plan to kind of win the ball back anywhere, and so it's just your center backs are trying to win the ball back 100 times a game because they're under a ton of pressure and people are running at them for kind of free, essentially. So is there anything in the press that you guys are seeing specifically that stinks?
I mean, looking at some of these stats for someone like Schlotterbeck, I mean, it's also the argument that we're just defending more than we have in previous. I don't know. We always defend a lot. What am I saying? I mean, certainly it's not working as it should be, and I certainly it almost feels like a heavy press is also Dortmund's Achilles heel, because when the other teams press us really high, then we absolutely don't know how to press back. And I think the beginning of the game against Stuttgart, we really saw that Dortmund tries the high press and immediately Stuttgart just cancels it out and their press is more effective. In terms of specific things, I'm going to kind of repeat what Ali said a few minutes ago, and that's that I think some of the players look confused at times. They're not 100% sure of themselves within the system, or they're not confident with how the system is working, and that extra second or two of trying to think of who to press, which direction to go, is just affecting the reaction time. But in trying to break down why the press isn't working as a whole, I mean, I think it's difficult to pinpoint one thing. I really do think it's a combination.
Dortmund is actually defending 1% of the match less this year than last year.
Of course.
Because we have 58% possession so far this year compared to 57% last year.
Yeah, I mean, so, to talk about the stats, Eli, I think if, I guess to echo what you said earlier, if the center backs are being more involved in tackles and interceptions, it means that they're getting exposed a lot more, which is not something you want ever, right? You want to protect them as much as you can. So that's something that needs to be addressed. For that ball over the top for the first goal, if I'm not mistaken, was it Bayer that was trying to play a 1-2 with Gross? It gets cut out, and there's no one around. The player on the ball. I think the closest two were Gross and Chan, and they didn't have enough time to get there. I know we're attacking, right? But the reaction was just jog back, and then once that ball is played over top, you see everyone start to sprint back. Whereas it should be sprint to recover, and then just keep the press high. But it like in terms of specific things, I feel like we should ask Peace Check and see how he's setting up the team defensively, because I don't understand if we're conceding this many similar chances in terms of like it's a constant ball over the top. Our center backs are having to step forward. Anton, right? We could talk about a couple weeks ago how he had some poor decision making, but he was put in an awkward position too. And yeah, I feel like what do I feel like? I'm as confused as they are. Like, what's the goal? Like, what are we trying to do here, Shaheen? Like, I'm just kind of confused too.
Yeah, I think our press is kind of like Kareem Adeyemi, and like just hope he wins the ball back, because he's
For
like
sure.
the only player that's considerably up this year compared to last year. Ali, can you cut that curse out? My bad.
I'll put a whale noise. It's all right.
Perfect. Kareem Adeyemi's up from 1.88 to 2.35. He goes down. We don't know how to win the ball back. And relying on a player being incredibly fast is not like a solution or sustainable, clearly, as he's already gotten injured. And the issue is we don't know how they're trying to win the ball back, because in that situation you just talked about, Gross or Bayer could immediately press the guy who wins the ball and make them turn and play the ball back to their goalie. And oftentimes when you make a direct team like Union Berlin do that, they're just going to end up playing a hopeful long ball and you win the ball back easily. And that's what you see good teams do. Or you could see what Dortmund did last year, where you immediately sprint back on defense and chase the ball in behind and collapse on the guy before he can try and create a chance. Last season, we weren't necessarily the best at that, obviously, but that's a way of playing. A better example of it would be like Atletico Madrid of a couple of years ago when they were playing a bit more defensive. That's kind of what they did. Is they're gonna sprint back. Or you could play like some of these Italian teams where they keep their back line a bit deeper, and then the other team has to sprint an extra 10 yards before they can even get to your back line, and they have a much harder time of getting in behind. Or if they get in behind, they're just looking to win a throw or a corner because they're so isolated. The striker is so isolated from the rest of their team. Those are different. There's a lot of different ways of playing, and I think we'd all be happy if we see any system work. But right now, the system isn't there for us to see, and I think that's why we're a bit confused, because you can't analyze like an inconsistent system aside from saying like we don't know what they're trying to do. I think that's kind of like the brunt of it.
Oh, sorry if you don't mind, Joey.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in and say, like, in the most recent games, with the way that Adeyemi and Seru have been playing off each other, the offensive transition in counters has been pretty nice. And I know Shaheen wants to play this expansive style, but I think that, we should consider, like, listen, if we can't put two passes together, to penetrate, maybe we should, spend 10-15. Let's draw the opponents out. Let's create the space, because we have Adeyemi on the wing. We have JBG. Seru is pretty quick on his feet. Also, when you have those three running forward, it gives guys like Brandt and Sabitzer a bit more time on the ball to pick the right pass. Um, I think like a plan works until it's not working, and at the moment it's not, it hasn't even started working. So I think you should consider an alternative approach. I know it's not great to say, but we want results, and I know we want this style to work, but it's we have some pretty big games coming up, and I wouldn't want some stubbornness to get in the way of a good season.
Yeah,
Hey,
I totally agree with that, and especially with the inconsistency between games. It's almost like we need to go back to the basics a little bit in terms of how we line up for a match.
well, we got to get our start of the weekend. So I think we're just gonna pick based off the Celtic match. I'll go Kareem Adeyemi. If someone else wants to pick him as well, you can talk about him. Because I've said enough at this point.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mentioned earlier 0.25 personal XG and got those 3 goals in one half. So Kareem is definitely my star of the week as well.
All right, unoriginal. I'll
Very.
pick Seru. I'll pick Seru. He's really impressed me. I didn't, like I've said it before. I wasn't watching Stuttgart like that crazy last season, but he's been really exciting for the team. And that game, like that goal, right? Schlotterbeck, your boy, to Seru, that was nice, right? The cutback, it was a nice goal.
Okay, and
All right.
then dud of the week, Ali, you can start us off because you ended. I think we might have a bit more to say at this part.
Okay. I don't want to eat up on players, but Anton in the second half of the Union game, he had a lot of the ball and didn't make enough of the right decisions. He delayed passes and chose the wrong ones at times. And I'm gonna put it on him, but it's not entirely his fault because he's not Schlotterbeck, so I don't know why we're asking him to do more than he should.
Yeah, I think Schlotterbeck's our best center back on the ball. And so when you have a system that forces you to play through your right back, when your best ball playing center back is your left center back, there's kind of an issue there because that doesn't like line up. It doesn't fit together. So when you play this hyper specific system, it's just kind of an issue because you can't like use the best player's ability, which is when you're at a top club, what you really see guys do. So Joey, who's your
Where's
dud
Zula?
of the week?
This
Sorry.
is this might be a little bit harsh because I think this player is only partially to blame for him being the dud. I do think part of this has to do with how Shaheen is using him. But my dud is going to be Maxi Bayer. I know he still needs minutes. He needs to really find his feet with the club. Um, but I do expect a little bit more from him, just in terms of playing. He came in the Celtic game in the 61st minute. He had 2 accurate passes and 4 touches total in that 30-minute appearance. And today, I just felt like he was completely non-existent in the match, and I do think that's partially because he's being played on the wing when that's not really his natural position. And I didn't watch him a whole lot when he was at Hoffenheim, but I do know he scored 16 times in the league last season. So I expect him to be a little bit better in the coming weeks, and hopefully he will find his form.
Yeah, we talk about decision making a lot on this podcast, and I feel like a lot of times it's kind of like a player who's creating so much or getting on the end of so many chances that like whatever. Maxi Bayer had a ball that I think Emmer Shan gave him, and he had like not a great shooting opportunity, but like a decent chance, like an average chance to take a shot, and he pulls it back out of the box. And I'm like, what are we doing? Um, like no one is in the box. You have, except for like you and a guy on the far left with about four defenders in between the two of you. You have a half yard of space on your right foot. Take the shot. He did it in the second half. He had another moment to do it, and he took the shot. And it was a nice save. Pretty good hit. But I want to see Maxi Bayer take that shot. I want to see him play with a bit more confidence. I did like in the second half, I think someone spoke to him and said, just try things. Because I don't think any of them really worked out in this match. But we've seen him at Hoffenheim flick the ball by defenders and complete a lot of take-ons for a striker. Nothing came off today when he was trying to flick the ball over guys' heads, flick the ball past them. It didn't work today, but if you're seeing him do that, I think that's a sign of a confident player. And as soon as that comes off, he'll be so much more confident, and that'll help him score goals and help the team. And that's like something Kareem Adeyemi can do, and I think Maxi Bayer's not anywhere near as fast or as quick, but he is a fast and quick player. So doing those things, I think, will help the team, and I think that'll be the difference. My dud of the week, it's Julian Brandt, and it's so hard for me to say like any specific week that he's been terrible at anything, but he needs to be better every single week. Essentially, like this is an accumulation of him not being up to the standards he has set. It's around 20 goal contributions for about 3 seasons in a row now. And when you're that player, you are paid like you are that player. You need to perform as that player, and he has not. I need him in like the center of the park, trying to create chances, because that will open up space for Jan Koto on the right wing. It will open up space on the left wing for Jamie Bino Gittins, Julian Dernville, whoever it may be. Whoever's the 1v1 winger will be helped by that. Brandt needs to be the guy that's kind of opening up that space by forcing the other team's central midfielders to stay compact in the middle of the park and mark him. So I don't know if it's like the freedom, whatever. I think he's doing too much 8 stuff and too much like playing the ball before the ball. When like we literally just signed Pascal Gross for that. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, I agree. I think. No, I was just gonna echo it. Like we're seeing like a shadow of the Brandt of in the past few seasons. I'd like him to be a bit more involved towards the the final third. Pardon me, I lost my words there. But I think he needs to be higher up the pitch, 100%, and actually be in the center of the park, not just like as you said, supporting, which is great. He's supposed to do those things, but like he pulls strings, and you need him to pull strings where, he's an instinctual player, right? Let him go where he needs to go. I feel like he's this is gonna sound bad, but he's following too many instructions. Like, just let him, let him feel the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he definitely is a player that thrives in a more free role, and you can see like the last couple years under Terzic, who doesn't have that much structure in the attack, and that comes with problems in certain ways. But like, I think you just need to find a way in which the roles around Julian Brandt free him up to do whatever he wants, because he knows the space. He knows how to, like, they use the term Raumdeuter, space interpreter, or that might be a different one, but like, I think Raumdeuter is space interpreter, but like not in the same way that Thomas Muller is a second striker, that just is a little bit more free. I think he really can interpret the space and knows where to attack, and knows how to like kind of maneuver himself so he's not getting in anyone else's way. I kind of trust him to do that, and I think right now he's being I think Ali's actually entirely right when he's saying he's listening to too many instructions. I would phrase it as he's being given too many instructions, but that, like, it's just a different way to, like, skin a cat or whatever the saying would be. I think it's the same. The last thing I wanted to say about Nuri Sahin is, like, I think right now his system is crap. It's way too soon to fire him, because, like, maybe at some point something clicks in all the players. and the press works, and then we start to create chances left and right. It's way too soon. It's so early. But it is currently not working, and I think that is on him more than the players. Uh, do you have any comments on Nuri Shaheen beyond that?
I mean, I think what you said sums it up pretty well. We look at like I look at Stuttgart sometimes and see how Sebastian Hoeneß is really getting the best out of so many of his players. And since the season has begun, I have not felt like Shaheen has been getting the best out of really any of his players except maybe Kareem Adeyemi. And now he's injured, so that's out the window. Ali?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but if something's not working, you do have to, if we're using sayings, right? Throw the kitchen sink. You know what I mean? At the you have to figure out something that's gonna work because I think I understand how he wants to play. It's not working, and you need results. And like Eli said, right? If he's thinking about his job, he's gonna need 3 points week in week out in the Champions League now and in the Bundesliga. So I think that if it's not working, you kind of have to change it, or at least what he could do. Here's an idea: play defensive for parts of the game, right? Because the team already knows how to do it and they know how to counter. So play defensive, right? You could start the game like that, right? Because we concede goals early. And what you could do is once the opposition, right, is pulled out, you can now start to impose yourself throughout the game because they're going to lose their momentum and get tired and things like that. And then you can start to play this expansive style and get your creativity and things like that. We have the pace, we have the tech and everything like that. So I don't know. I do hope he changes something soon because it's not working. And I don't want another person to say anything about our backline being bad. It's just like they're just getting exposed.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not protected.
It's been 5 years of people saying this, and like you look at some of the personnel that's come through Dortmund in that time. Dan Axel Zagadou was a strong contributor for a top 2 finish last year. Manuel Akanji
At Man
left
City.
for absolutely nothing, and immediately won a treble as a starting player. Like the personnel back there is good. They're good every time that they're away from Dortmund, and then they come to Dortmund and they don't know how to defend. No, like there's an issue that is more broad that is affecting our backline where like the team doesn't know how to defend, and we haven't seen them like defend well in a long time. Sven Bender had like a good spell there. I think we conceded like 6 less goals it was in the second half of last season, and we played more games in the second half of last season after the winter break than we played in the first half. So conceding 6 less goals in even less games is good. And I think part of that's maybe like allowing the right type of shot that's a bit easier for Kobel to save rather than like some of the big chances we've seen this year when the ball goes up in the air and then there's a lot of headers, like whatever it could be. That, like I don't have the time to look at every single chance Kobel is saving versus what he's allowing to figure out like what type of chance he's better at conceding. They're on the training ground with him every day. They have access to, I'm sure, an analytics department. They can tell him, and then you try and like you allow yourself to concede that type of chance because your goalie's a bit better at it instead of conceding whatever we're conceding now. Because I don't think Kobel's necessarily at the level he was last year. And I think it's because we're conceding like a different type of chance. But let's get into our final topics of the day. We have 2 left. We're going to run through these real quick. So Julian Ryerson signs a contract until 2028. Who else do you think Dortmund... Oh, first off, we love a guy getting a pay raise regardless. Players' rights, love that. Who do we think Dortmund should extend in the near future?
I mean, of the few players who have contracts expiring in the next few years. I mean, I certainly think the first couple to look at would be Julian Brandt and Niklas Sula. And as we've already kind of established, Brandt needs to be better. But expiring in 2026, there is certainly time to figure out if he can maintain or reestablish. I do believe he can reestablish the form that we've seen him in the past. Um, and that could be he could be a player who continues to be really big for us. I mean, he starts every game at this point. Nicolas Sula, I think, is a little tricky because he has been fairly inconsistent. We know that there's a world-class player in there. We just don't always see that world-class player come out. And then a couple of these guys like Schlotterbeck and Adeyemi, they've got contracts going through 2027. I'm just looking at the notes. And I don't necessarily think there's any need for a huge rush on either of them. Now, should one or both of them start receiving some kind of absurd interest from the Premier League, I could see Dortmund trying to lock either or both of them down for a bit longer. But, I mean, 2027 still, I mean, that's still 2 full seasons, not including the rest of this one. So there's time. And Emre Can, I tend to, I defend him at times.
He'll be 32 too when that's up.
I'm not convinced that Emre Can is the player to remain in that role well into his 30s. I think we're just gonna kind of have to wait and see on that. But that's all I'm gonna say on that one. Ollie?
So I think the best way to go about it would be, which players would you want to see in like 3-4 years that you'd be actually like happy to have on the team, and Zula. So I really like him, and I do think he has a lot to offer. Issue is we don't see it on a consistent basis, and for some reason. Go ahead, say it.
His wages, like, you don't...
Yeah.
He's not going to accept an extension because offering him an extension at his current wage rate would be moronic. His current wage rate is about...
For sure.
He's riding high.
Like, he should be at about 60% of that. That's what he's worth in terms of salary to Dortmund. I'm very happy that he's getting paid more. Great for him. Great for his family. 10 generations from now, they'll still have that. That's generational wealth. Good for them. Especially in Europe, with some excellent public transportation and social services. But like some of these guys, like Kareem Adeyemi, I love the guy, but he's on a very high wage and he's contracted for 3 more years. So you have time to essentially see if you are going to give him a bigger contract, because at his age the next one's going to be bigger. Schlotterbeck is on a pittance. Like, this guy is so much better, and that essentially, like, him being underpaid means that if any semblance of interest, whether it's from Premier League, Real Madrid, whoever it is, comes in for him, bigger club in Italy, like, whoever it is comes in for him, he's going to be a lot quicker to move towards that, no matter how happy he is in Dortmund, if the dollar signs are adding up. Like, this is a guy who became a father last year. He has to provide for his child. He's younger than me. What is he doing?
Not everybody's Marco Reus.
Listen, I think he's happy with his girlfriend, whatever. But he's underpaid, so I think he's the ideal candidate for me. Whereas like Sula, I would like Sula past 2026, but we can talk about that in 2020, like the first half of 20, or like the second half. Of 2025, once that last season starts, then you go to Sula and you say, okay, we'll offer you an extension at like 60% of the wages, 2-year extension that takes him through his age 32 season, but we're going to offer you $6 million a year, and we're going to pay out the rest of this year as like, or you offer him a 3-year at that point because it'd be 2025. Sorry, I was going off the end of his current, or adding 2 years onto his current contract. But like if you go to him then, you can essentially pay him out like the rest of his current contract as like a signing bonus or renewal bonus, whatever, or have that year remain at 10 and then add 2 years on at 6. Like that makes more sense to me. Whereas like
For
you
sure.
can't talk about that until the contract is closer to ending because he makes so much more. Um, Shan is
I was gonna say like I want
a
him out.
moronic
I'm not gonna
contract,
lie.
but we don't need to get into that.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But like with Zula, I really like him. He's not playing enough. He's not consistent in the team. I don't know who would want to take him at that, at that wage. But if they somehow find a suitor, I think it'd be all right because, um, you know, we do have young guys in the youth academy that we can bring into the team. Now, whether they're ready or not, that's a whole other conversation. But I would like to, you know, give these guys a chance. You can bring in someone else, a bit easier on the bank. I think that's a better option. Zula, I like him, but I'm okay with him going. In terms of like the rest, Brandt, I obviously want him to stay. Adiemi, we still got a couple of years before then. But Chan, now I'm gonna let Eli take this one because I did sort of kind of cut him off. Go ahead.
Well, I just don't think there's any reason to extend him because at that point, like this is Shan's age 30 season. He's on a very high wage. I think it's like 8.5 million euros, something like that. It's just like he's gonna be 32 when that happens, and this is a guy who's more physically reliant than technically reliant. Like you don't talk about extending a physically reliant player who's going to be 32 when his contract's up. You talk about selling that player. From a business perspective, if Emre Can's my fourth choice number 6, or like my fourth choice midfielder, then like sure he can like play out his contract, and if he gets to that point, he can take like not like a Kiel Watyen role this year, because like Kiel Watyen's like a developmental player, but almost as that like fifth choice midfielder, but with a bit more minutes, and have him like take on a role where he's like a player coach, player leader, and gets like some minutes split between like center back, whatever. Like then you can talk about extending him, shifting him back to center back could help his legs hold up. Maybe at his old age, like you see Kevin Vogt at like his like mid to late 20s, kind of matured from a midfielder, I think, to a center back. He could do something like that, especially if a coach wants to play back 3, and he can play a bit of a stopper role. Like there's a world in which he could get extended. Like I'm not saying that it's no, but I'm saying like that's again something like his contract is so high that no one is coming for him unless it's Saudi or like a Saudi team, until. Or like some of the Italian sides do really dumb business. I mean, Scott McTominay for 30 plus million, great for McTominay. Goes from living in England to Naples. I wish I could do that.
Maybe Chelsea will come for him. They seem to want every player and their cousin these days.
No, he's not a U23.
Mixed sauce is worth every penny.
I'm not sure Chelsea would talk to Emre Can. They prefer minors.
I'm cutting that.
You're not cutting that. That's objectively true.
Alright, fair. Alright.
Like Chelsea signed 16-year-olds. I will stand on that. Leave that all in, including the explanation. I'm not. I'm not the one signing minors to 6+2 year contracts, whatever they're doing over there.
It was just the way you said it. Minors.
Yeah, it's a joke, and it made people laugh. It's okay.
Doing some shady business in the Premier League.
Yeah, they're signing 16 to 18-year-olds. They're signing literal teenagers for 8-year deals. Like, that's what they're interested. They're not interested in a 32-year-old Emre Can.
8 years is actually crazy.
Get him to age 20.
You should not legally be allowed to sign an 8-year contract at age 18. Like, my goodness, what are we doing?
Crazy.
This
Yo,
guy
that's-
is
that's
signing
NFL
away like
money.
his entire career.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Madness.
it's great it's great financial security, I guess. So in some ways it's better for players, but to me it's just like he's signing that at 18. He doesn't know what he's
Yeah.
gonna want when he's 24.
26 by then.
I'm saying like he doesn't
6
know what
months
he's
too,
gonna
yeah.
think when he's 22, let alone like
Yeah, that's such a
think
messed up contract.
about you at age 18 versus age. Maybe we
Yeah.
should just cut this whole segment and just like wrap the show. 'Cause
No,
we're not
this-
even talking about Dortmund
Let's
anymore.
wrap it. Let's wrap it.
This is a
Okay,
good
let's wrap
conclusion.
it. I think this is great content. But I don't know.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Keep it going.
Yeah, get everyone to laugh at the end. I like it.
Oh my god. I'm
Yeah,
out of
'cause we
form,
got
guys.
spanked.
I'm out of form. I was
Yo,
in
we got spanked
Dortmund.
by Union. We need to laugh. We need to laugh.
I guess Dortmund's not in form either.
I'm out of show hosting form.
Hey man, we love it. We love it.
I'm like Kareem Adeyemi when I came from Salzburg to Dortmund for the first like couple months. I'm just trying to figure it out, mature a bit. But at this point,
my
he's
God.
clearly figured it out, so I can say that he's past it. He's an elite player now.
Yeah, just needs to eat more
8
broccoli.
game sample. Over an 8 game sample. Over an 8 game sample. No,
my
he's
face
been
hurts.
good. He's been trending up. He's actually good.
Oh man.
But I think that's actually like a good. I feel like that's a good comparison because when we started this, I was terrible.
Why is he still going? Oh my god. Oh man.
I'm hilarious.
Yo, you killed me. I'm not gonna
Oh,
lie.
man.
He comes back from Dortmund with a sense of humor.
Always
you-
been funny. That's
If you're,
crazy.
if
Oh,
you're a
man.
Dortmund fan, you need a sense of humor, man.
At this point, this season.
Oh my god.
Oh
I
my
need to watch the Yankee game. Come on, guys. Let me go.
All right, go. All right, yo.
Let's do an outro.
Bundesliga fantasy update. Did you do it?
No, we can't do it because the weekend hasn't ended.
Weekend hasn't ended. All right, guys. Stay tuned for next week. We'll update you guys then. Joey, plug your socials.
J_Lamson_Meyer. You follow me on Twitter. Have a nice post-match reaction for today's game. If you feel like reliving some of the horror, that's at fearthewall.com. Also writing for BBB Buzz.
You can follow Ollie right here. It's VZN. The audio listeners won't
Sports.
see me point, but it's there.
Yeah.
You can follow the Twitter that I use most, which is Dortmund Dispatch. I have a personal Twitter if you see it. Okay, cool. No one cares. Follow Dortmund Dispatch. Follow us on YouTube. Watch us on YouTube. Like our videos. Follow us everywhere. Rate
Love
us
us.
5 stars. All that stuff. Thank you so much, and have a good one.